The release of the Electoral Boundaries Review Committee's report yesterday paves the way for Singapore's next general election. The changes include the creation of 5 new GRCs and 6 new SMCs. How will the new boundaries impact both the ruling People's Action Party and opposition parties in the upcoming general election? We get to the point with Terence Ho, Associate Professor in Practice at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. So hi Terence. So firstly, what stands out the most for you in the EBRC report?
So among the many changes to the electoral boundaries, the ones that stood out for me most were the formation of new GRCs, namely the Punggol, Pasir Ris Changi, West Coast Jurong West, and Jurong East Bukit Batok, as these would affect the largest numbers of voters. Also, I note that this year the report set out the rationale for some of these changes, which is unlike previous reports, at least since the 1990s. I think it's good that the EBRC has responded to the public interest in the work and has taken these steps to increase transparency.
And how will these change boundaries impact the electoral performance of political parties for the PAP and the Workers' Party in particular?
So I think that the opposition held wards. The Workers' Party held Hougang SMC and Sengkang GRC. There are no changes there. And the changes to Aljunied GRC are fairly minor, affecting about 3,800 voters in 3 polling districts. However, there would be significant changes to the East Coast GRC and Marine Parade Braddell Heights GRC, where the WP contested in the last election. So this really bears watching. It's hard to predict the impact of the boundary changes on election performance because the particular candidates fielded also have an impact. So for the PAP, I think the best performing constituency in the past 2 elections was Jurong GRC. And this year, they have been carved out into separate constituencies. And this could actually strengthen the PAP's performance in these other constituencies that have absorbed parts of Jurong GRC, if we take it that Jurong is a PAP stronghold. However, as I mentioned, I think the PAP's past performance also depended a lot on the specific opposition that they face and the candidates that they fielded. So it's not a given that a particular area or estate will always pull very strongly for the PAP.
What about the opposition parties, like maybe the smaller opposition parties?
Yeah, for them, I think the smaller parties, the challenge will be how to deconflict among themselves, which districts they will be contesting in, so as to avoid 3-cornered or multi-cornered fights. So they have much to do in terms of planning ahead of the general election.
One of the highlights of the report was that it gave more rationale behind the significant redrawing of the boundaries, especially in the western and eastern constituencies. So how do you see the battles playing out there?
Yeah, so I think the starting point for the redrawing of the boundaries was really the increase in voters due to new housing developments, notably in Pasir Ris, Punggol GRC, as well as the existing Hong Kong North SMC. And these in turn had knock-on effects on adjacent constituencies, motivating the formation of a new Punggol GRC and Pasir Ris Changi GRC, with the consequent changes as well to East Coast GRC and Marine Parade GRC. And certainly this will have an impact on the contests in the East, where some of these have been quite close, especially in East Coast GRC. So with the increase in the size of the East Coast GRC with new polling districts added, it would make for quite interesting contests. And Marine Parade GRC as well, where WP contested in the last election, will also have new dynamics as a result of these changes. In the West, the growth of Hong Kong North has prompted the breakout of this SMC, Tengah moving to Choa Chu Kang GRC, while some of the Bukit Batok West estates are forming a new Jurong East and Bukit Batok GRC. Again, this has downstream effects on the Jurong GRC, on the existing West Coast GRC, where the PSP contested with the PAP in the last election. So again, there will be new dynamics and it will make for an interesting contest.
What kind of moves do you expect the PAP and opposition parties to make in terms of fielding candidates, given, there will be strong contests in all these key battlegrounds?
I think for the Workers' Party, the main issue they will face is whether to try to move out some of their incumbent MPs within the wards that they hold into other divisions that they want to contest in, for example, East Coast. I think that would be the main decision that they will have to make. As for the PAP, I think they usually stick to a strategy of having each constituency anchored by a minister. I think they will continue with the strategy, but they could spring some surprises as they have done in the past by shifting around a few of the heavyweight ministers.
And finally, the last question that is on everyone's minds: when might the general election be held?
So again, going by past precedents, apart from the GE 2020, in many of the other recent elections, usually the general election is held within 1 to 3 months after the EBRC report is released. So my own guess would be around May,